The night was thick with tension. Michael Bracciano found himself standing outside a small cafe in a quiet part of the city, far from the Bracciano estate. He didn't come here often. Too many memories. This was his mother's favorite spot. The place she had taken him when he was a boy, long before the weight of the family's name had fallen on his shoulders. Inside, sitting at a table, was his brother Marco. Marco was the wild one, the enforcer of the family, known for handling the dirty work. Unlike Michael, Marco had no hesitation about embracing the life their father had built. Michael pushed open the door, the bell jingling above his head. Marco looked up from his coffee, flashing a quick, tight smile. He gestured for Michael to sit down across from him.
It's been a while. You've been avoiding us again.
Michael slid into the seat, his jaw tight. He didn't want to be here, but Carlo had insisted. There were family matters to discuss. Business.
You know why I stay away. This life isn't for me, Marco. We've had this conversation 1,000 times.
Marco shrugged, leaning back in his chair. His leather jacket creaked as he moved, and the small scar over his eyebrow caught the light. A reminder of the violence that followed him everywhere.
It's not about what you want, Mikey. It's about loyalty. Dad's got problems, big ones. The DeSalvo family is moving in on our territory. They're making plays, and they're not being subtle about it.
Michael's stomach tightened. The DeSalvos. A rival family, just as ruthless as the Braccianos, maybe worse. Michael had heard the rumors, hits, extortion, kidnappings. Their ambition had grown dangerous, and it seemed they were ready to start a war.
And what does that have to do with me?
Marco leaned forward, his face serious now.
Dad needs you. He won't say it, but we all know it. Carlo's handling the businesses. I'm keeping the streets in line, but you're the only one who can keep a cool head. You're the one people trust.
Michael shook his head, frustration bubbling up.
I've stayed out of this for a reason, Marco. I didn't go to war just to come back and start another one here.
Marco's eyes darkened, and he leaned in closer.
This isn't about what you did over there. This is about family. The DeSalvos aren't going to stop. They'll come for us, all of us. You can pretend you're above this, Mikey, but when they come knocking on your door, what are you gonna do?
Michael didn't answer. He couldn't. Marco was right. The DeSalvos didn't care about his desire for peace. They didn't care that he'd tried to live a normal life. To them, he was still a Bracciano, and that made him a target. Later that night, Michael found himself in the dark corners of his father's estate. Sal was in his study, as always, sitting behind the heavy wooden desk that had become his throne. The soft glow of the lamp cast long shadows across the room. Michael stood in the doorway, watching his father silently for a moment. Sal was lost in thought, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the desk. He hadn't heard Michael come in. When Sal finally noticed him, he didn't smile, but his eyes lit up with a knowing look.
Michael, I wondered when you'd come.
Michael stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The air felt heavy, filled with the unspoken history between them. Sal gestured to the chair across from him, and Michael sat down.
I heard about the DeSalvos.
Sal sighed, rubbing his temples.
They've grown bolder. They're testing us, pushing into our territories. It won't stop until one of us is in the ground.
Sal's voice was calm, but the weight of the threat hung in the air. Michael could see the strain in his father's face. Despite his control, despite the power he wielded, the years were catching up with him. The life he had built was becoming a battlefield, and the enemies were closing in.
What are you going to do?
Sal looked at him, his expression unreadable.
I've made moves, but this fight won't be won by force alone. The DeSalvos are calculating, and they've got politicians in their pocket. We need more than muscle. We need strategy.
Michael knew where this was going. He could feel it in his gut.
And that's why you need me.
Michael said, his voice flat. Sal didn't deny it.
You see things differently. You're not blinded by the hunger for power like your brothers. You think, you plan, and you act when the time is right. That's what we need now.
Michael stood up, the frustration bubbling up inside him.
I'm not like you, Dad. I don't want to be part of this. I didn't ask for it.
Sal's face softened for a brief moment, but only a moment.
We don't always get to choose our fate, Michael. Sometimes the blood that runs through us decides for us.
Michael turned to leave, but his father's voice stopped him.
You think you can live outside this world, Michael? You think you can escape? I tried that once a long time ago, and look where it brought me.
Michael hesitated at the door, his hand on the handle. He could feel the pull, the weight of his family's history dragging him back. No matter how much he fought it, no matter how far he ran, he was still a Bracciano.
One way or another, Michael. You'll come back. The world doesn't let men like us live in peace.
The night was cold as Michael stepped outside into the courtyard. The estate was quiet, the lights from the house casting long shadows across the ground. He stood there for a moment staring up at the sky. The stars above seemed so distant, so far removed from the darkness that surrounded his family. But Marco's words echoed in his mind. The DeSalvos weren't going to stop. They would come for him, just as they would come for the rest of the Braccianos. And no matter how much he wanted to deny it, Sal was right. Blood was thicker than water. Michael wasn't sure what his next move would be, but one thing was clear. The fight was coming, and he had a choice to make. Would he stand with his family, or would he try once again to walk away from a world that wouldn't let him go? As the cold wind blew through the courtyard, Michael felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The war was just beginning, and whether he liked it or not, his blood tied him to it.